Hey everybody, welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today we'll be watching Wacky War Tactics in Another Nutshell by BlueJay. Now we watched the first episode of Wacky War Tactics, and I gotta say, it definitely lived up to the title. We saw some truly strange war tactics throughout history, and I'm excited to get more of those today. Now if you guys end up enjoying this one, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and if you would like early access to reactions just like this, you can become a channel member by hitting the join button next to the subscribe button, give you early access to reactions like these, or exclusive access to other reactions I've done exclusively for channel members and patrons. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into this reaction.
So, I was looking through my YouTube analytics the other day and discovered
Whoa.
two things. One,
A lot of
not nearly
views.
enough of you are subscribed, and two, my audience male-to-female ratio is unacceptably masculine and would easily make my channel the lamest frat party on campus. Now, to solve this, I did some research on...
I don't think I'm any better. Mine is a real sausage fest as well. Come on, we need to get more women in here. We need to balance out the demographics a little bit. I don't think that's gonna happen.
female-dominated YouTube categories and found some topics like beauty, style, East Asian music. Last one aside, I think this explains why my recent videos have thankfully brought in more ladies. Now it's just about keeping this momentum going until I hit a 50-50 split. So today, we're going to talk about the wackiest ways people have tried to murder each other in military history. Again.
Hey, we don't need to break it down into gender. Wacky war tactics, that can be for anybody.
Now, if you're anything like me, your interest in learning about creative strategies used in history is only surpassed by your disgust for the state of Missouri. Thinking they're hot stuff with their stupid bendy tube in the sky, they just drive by and say, haha, look, it's like McDonald's but half, before heading on to a better state.
Wow,
Well, luckily,
shots
you both
fired.
satisfy your itch for strategy and urge to level the state of Missouri in Conflict of Nations World War III. Conflict of Nations is a free online...
I'll let the ad play through, as I usually do on videos like these. You can find his video linked down below, by the way. What does he have against Missouri? I mean, I'm not saying it's my favorite state, but I just don't think about it much. Maybe he's from one of the surrounding states, right? When you're a neighbor, you've always got more beef. It's like, yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania, us in New Jersey. We're neighbors, we've got major beef between us. So maybe it's that. I didn't think I'd see Missouri getting some flack in this one.
Link in the description.
Things are already tough enough in Missouri. Come on now.
And 1 month of premium subscription for free.
Shots fired
Thanks
again.
to the Conflict of Nations for sponsoring the video. Ancient Egypt. Cool place, right? I mean, how could you not love what's based in the Yu-Gi-Oh theme park? The ancient Egyptians were a quirky folk, known for practices like wrapping mummies and cherishing life. You know, things that have no place in today's world. The Egyptians saw life as a gift from the gods, and they loved all the lovely critters in the animal kingdom so much that they made them pets, made them mummies, made them cops. Baboon police was a thing, look it up. But nothing quite compared to their love of cats. These furry felines were admired for their rodent-catching skills and their magical and divine connection to the cat goddess Bastet. This meant that cats and animals were a sacred cornerstone of ancient Egyptian culture, a culture that the Persian king Cambyses II was very well educated in. It's the 6th century BCE, and the Persians are looking at everything not Persia, noting the unacceptable lack of Persianness, which can only be fixed with the addition of yet more Persia. And next in line...
I'd say this is a strategy that Persia used throughout its history. They looked around them, they said, I'm seeing a lot of not Persia. How do I solve this? Just make it Persia. This is why you see so many of these powerful Persian states throughout history, and I really mean many. This was a repeating trend, whether you're talking about the Parthians, the Sassanids, etc., etc. There are many of these powerful Persian empires. You'd often see clashes between other powerful states in the region, like Egypt, or the Greek states, or the Roman Empire, if we're looking a little later.
For their Persian conversion excursion was their cat-loving neighbors down south. Cambyses II took his Persian army to meet the young Egyptian pharaoh Psamtik III at his fortified position at Pelusium, according to stratagems by... Polyenis, the Egyptians were initially keeping the Persians at bay before Cambyses II decided to switch tactics. Our forces are stalled, sir. We're gonna need to do something if we want to gain the upper hand. Do not fret, Plebiscius, for I have studied the Nile folk and discovered a vital weakness. They shall cower in fear before the peril of my new ultimate weapon. Copernicus, bring forth the kitten trebuchet.
Huh?
Wait, trebuchet? Oh, we thought you said paper mache. So you didn't build my weapon or bring any cats? Oh no, we brought cats. We always bring cats. I think you missed a golden opportunity with catapults, sir. Shut the fuck up, grab the kittens. What? Grab the fucking kittens, Plebiscius. In one of the first recorded instances of psychological warfare, Cambyses II had his men paint the image of Bastet on the front of their shields and spread cats and other animals before their front line.
I feel like I've heard of this one somewhere before, the idea of bringing these animals that are highly respected or sacred to the Egyptians, and, well, not only bringing them physically, but also painting these images on their shields and armor as a sort of psychological trick.
The Egyptian defense, upon seeing this display, refused to fight for fear of hurting the animals or striking the image of their goddess, resulting in the surrender of Pelusium. This left many Egyptians to be massacred as they retreated to Memphis, which would fall shortly after. Now, I bet you're probably thinking, that's dumb, they're just cats. How could that possibly undermine an entire defensive strategy? But keep in mind, these cats were the divine symbols of their gods, to be protected at all costs, else risk the eternal damnation of their soul. So switch out cats with Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, and you get the idea. When you think of early submarine warfare, your mind probably wanders to the German U-boats that terrorized the high seas during the more than adequate war. But what if I told you that the first successful combat submarine was actually built from an old steam boiler by a bunch of southern boys in Alabama? I'm talking, of course, about the H.L. Hunley. Named after the lawyer turned Confederate Marine engineer Horace Lawson Hunley.
I mean, I knew that, of course, we had things like submarines much earlier than the First World War, but for use in warfare or combat, I did not know it went this far back. Though, during the Civil War, which is what I'm assuming we're talking about here, given the region and the time period, there were some sort of pretty striking naval advancements.
This adorable little fish boat was designed to fight for the South in the American Civil War. Now, many thought Hunley was motivated by good old Southern patriotism and protecting the basic human right to suppress other people's basic human rights.
Yeah, well, talk about states' rights. We're fighting for states' rights. Oh, right, states' rights to do what? To own slaves. Okay, you got me. It was about slavery. Yeah, that's what I thought.
And normally, that's a reasonable assumption to make of a Confederate. But in actuality, Hunley's driving force to build a submarine was much more noble. War money. You see, whichever lucky southern boy or girl was able to sink themselves, one Yankee float would earn themselves a grand prize of up to $50,000 from Uncle Scooter, the equivalent of $1.3 million today. So Hunley and a group of engineers built and tested the hand-powered H.L. Hunley in Mobile, Alabama, before it got shipped off to Charleston to deal with those Yanks and their pesky ironclads. The Confederacy began testing the Hunley in Charleston Bay with a crew unfamiliar with the controls, which is basically...
Like I said, you had a lot of this naval technological advancement. He mentioned the ironclads there. I guess this is a little earlier than I would have thought. It's not incredibly surprising in response to these new steamships and ironclads, a new era of naval warfare, that, people would try and create new weapons and technologies to respond, one of which I suppose we're about to see in action here.
Basically the same thing as asking a horse to babysit your newborn. The Hunley was preparing to depart on its first attack when there was an accident with the controls, causing it to sink with the hatch open at the dock, drowning 5 of its 8-man crew. But not to worry, a submarine can be drained and people are replaceable. The sub was recovered, cleared out of some junk, and was given good as new to Horace Hunley to take command before setting off on another test run, with a more experienced crew this time. Good luck on the test, Hunley. Don't worry, I invented this thing. Okay, you go get him. I will, Charles. Okay, Clyde, get the crane ship. The Hunley sunk again, killing its creator and crew. But not to worry, a submarine can be drained and people are replaceable.
Wow.
The Hunley was recovered and...
They're still going, eh? I guess we'll see how far this goes, but you think at a certain point they'd be like, how many people have we killed in this sinking contraption? Maybe we should not give it another try.
Finally, set off on its first combat voyage targeting the USS Housatonic blockading Charleston. The Hunley was originally intended to tow a floating mine into its target, but this plan was labeled too dangerous as the rope could get tangled or the mine could drift into the submarine itself.
Yeah.
So instead, they thought it'd be safer to go with a spar torpedo, which was essentially a bomb. Attached to the end of a wooden stick.
Okay.
A spear, but with an aftertaste, if you will. The Hunley set off during the night, cranking its way towards its prey anchored 5 miles offshore. As the submarine approached, the crew of the Housatonic noticed a ripple in the water coming towards it. Enemy vessel off the port bow! Shit, it's below the water! Is that a whale? Can they train whales? Yarg, that's no whale, sonny. That be a beast of nuts and iron. Fire the guns! Phil, you're from Columbus, Ohio. Why are you talking like that? Fire the guns, ye scallywag! Given the fact that submarines tend to operate below the waterline, the guns on board the Housatonic weren't able to lower far enough to fire at the Hunley, forcing the crew to fire away with their small arms to no avail. This plan is genius. Them Yanks can't even touch us. You got that right, Cletus. You got that right. Alright, boys. We're about to deliver the payload. In 3, 2, 1. The torpedo made contact with the hole near the ammo storage, exploding on impact and sending massive amounts of debris in all directions. The Housatonic sank within 5 minutes and resulted in the deaths of only 5 of her crew. As for the HL Hunley, the crew was safe from the actual blast itself, but their close proximity to the payload meant that they faced the full force of the shockwave propagating through the vessel.
Right, so they were effective in taking down the enemy ship. However, that much pressure so close to them meant that they all got their damn necks snapped. Yeah, I guess there's some give and take there. You can determine whether that is worth it or not.
Which tends to not agree with your soft tissues, like your lungs or brain. So the entire crew of the HL Hunley died, and it sank for the last time after a...
Oh, right. I totally forgot. You're not getting that back. Everyone in there died. Well, it's gone right down to the bottom of the ocean. Well, I guess you could make another if you really wanted to.
Mission. At the end of its service, it was able to rack up a grand total of 26 kills. Only 5 of which were Northerners.
Right.
It is a bit disappointing that the slave-loving land of traitors gets to claim the world's first successful combat submarine, but if it makes you feel any better, populating the high seas with over 4 times more rebel corpses than the Union ones is about the most goddamn American thing you can do. And it would...
Yeah, classic Confederate moment. You've managed to kill a lot more of your own guys than you have of the enemy.
Only be a year later that the Confederacy would decide to release their flag update 2.0. For the more than satisfactory war to really earn that promotion to World War status, it had to break out of the little European bubble it started off in. One potential area to expand the moderately stellar war was Africa, where they...
All these different names he's got for the Great War, World War I. I'm really enjoying these as they keep coming.
It already brought a little bit of Europe to in years prior with a wee bit of scrambling. However, because a lot of European control over Africa was superficial, they decided to keep the colonies neutral to avoid instability and the chance of getting overthrown by the local Africans. Ultimately, they agreed that the only thing more important than existential geopolitical conflict was ensuring white man on top. This neutrality agreement was very important to the Europeans, lasting an entire week before they changed their minds.
Yeah, I was gonna say, neutral? Yeah, right. This is the First World War we're talking about. No one could resist just blasting at everybody the moment they had an opportunity. Everyone was all ginned up, ready for war. All these countries were extremely militarized. Tensions were high. So initially they're like, well, you know, we should keep our colonies neutral. Of course, we want to maintain control over the continent of Africa. Of course they couldn't manage to maintain that. Of course, they could not keep this neutrality going. As soon as there was an opportunity, they were shooting at each other wherever they saw each other, whether in Europe or Africa or beyond.
Tangga was the busiest seaport on the coast of German East Africa, a colony that snuggled up closely with British East Africa. The Germans are right there. Oh, this simply won't do. This will not do. This won't do at all, Charles. Right then, India, take care of these blokes. Okay. Britain sent a request to the India office to attack the neighboring German colony, resulting in the dispatch of an expeditionary force 8,000 strong to the port town of Tangga. The Brits pulled up without a problem, and because the local Germans were such a puny and pathetic force, decided to enter the town peacefully to give them the chance to surrender. Alright, bruv, gonna need you to lay down your guns. Ah, yes.
God, these English accents are killing me, man.
Sorry, man, I can't make that call. Gotta ask the Kaiser man first, you know. Ah, bosses, I get it. Yeah, no worries. I'll give you blokes 1 hour to lower your flag over there. Is that okay with you? Ja, that would be great. Perfect. By the way, we anchored a bit offshore. Are there any mines in the harbor? Yes. They met up with a sneaky little German messenger who led the Brits to believe that the harbor was mined and pretended he had to get permission to surrender. This bought the Germans some valuable time to get reinforcements and prepare for an attack. After 3 hours, the Brits realized they just got bamboozled harder than if they'd pre-ordered a Battlefield game, so they started to land their exhausted and seasick troops on the shoreline a few miles out of town. In an attempt to make up for some lost time, and because intel is for nerds, no reconnaissance was done beforehand as the clueless troops began their two-pronged attack on the town. Concealed German defenders quickly broke apart this advance, as bullets tend to do, resulting in lots of disorganized skirmishes. The northern prong was actually making some pretty good progress. Despite some minor hiccups, like getting shelled by their own ship and retreating officers getting shot by their colonels, they managed to make it all the way to the customs house, where the Indian troops raised the British flag over the German colony on African soil. Their advance
well, this is what imperialism does to you. You end up, I suppose, with, in some sense, a globalized world, but with everybody sort of being forced to do things they would not have done of their own accord. Also, just noting on the map here, you can see the rubber plantation. Good reminder that, of course, one of the things these European powers did, especially when they directly controlled territory in Africa and Asia, is that they set up these plantations for things like rubber, other important items to produce, other cash crops. Of course, slavery was officially outlawed in these empires, but that does not mean that the working conditions were good or that they were not extremely coercive.
Advance would be halted here, however, as they had to fall back to assist the southern prong, who weren't having as much luck. Those blokes were subjected to one of the new wonders of the war: machine guns.
Ooh.
These life-reducing devices tend to sting a little, so they halted the Indian.
I mean, these had already done a real number in Africa, you can think of, and I believe it's Winston Churchill writes an anecdote about one battle in particular, but a few of these battles had happened where the Brits had brought Gatling guns when they were fighting against African enemies, and he sort of describes how this Gatling gun just mows down waves and waves of these Africans coming at the British Army. Sort of this new wave of technology. Just one of the things that made everyone real excited to get into the First World War is that they'd spent decades at this point conquering countries in Africa and Asia, etc., with these new technologies like the Gatling gun, and they were like, look how easy warfare is. Yeah, it's not that easy when you're fighting against another one of these imperial powers. And a lot of these fellas, like a Churchill or these other pro-imperialism fellas, were sort of amazed at the effectiveness and wowed by these Gatling guns in action. And, you know, you could get to see these new machine guns in action against these different European armies in this conflict.
Troops advancing in the south, which is totally understandable. Imagine waltzing up to a tube on a hunky metal tripod, magically sending 500 metal bees at your face every minute. Well, they didn't have to imagine that metaphor too hard, as they were also swarmed by hundreds of real bees every minute. Flustered by all the machine gun fire, massive swarms of bees descended on the British troops from the surrounding trees. Maybe the bees sought to prove that not even the MG-01 can compete with the misery that African wildlife is capable of, or perhaps it was just a desperate attempt to remedy a battlefield woefully underpopulated by bees. But either way, the Brits now had to deal with a war on two fronts.
Uh-oh.
Looks like someone's a little lost. The Indian troops frantically popped off more lead in all directions than a Detroit suburb, firing blindly at Germans in the bushes and bees in the skies.
Yeah, that probably didn't help. You're being attacked by bees. You're shooting randomly. I guess not randomly, but I'm willing to bet those bullets were not hitting the bees.
No avail. Now that Mother Nature had established air superiority, the southern prong broke off into a full retreat. However, the Germans would be mistaken if they thought the little buzzing militia was their ally, for the bees did not believe in the magic of friendship. only pain. So when the German troops entered the Beast territory, they too fell victim to nature's air force. In the end, the British would lose the battle despite drastically outnumbering the Germans, who they generously supplied with enough weapons and equipment to last them the rest of the slightly delightful war. The Brits took upwards of 800 casualties out of 8,000 troops, compared to under 150 German casualties of merely 1,000 defenders, making this one of the most embarrassing defeats of the above-average war. So at this point, I'm sure some of you are probably scratching your heads, wondering how Little B fiasco could be considered a wacky war tactic when their intervention was nothing more than random chance. An understandable but incorrect conclusion to make. To the untrained eye, it would seem like nothing but bad luck on the surface, but if you just look closely, you'd notice that this was clearly the work of none other than Dr. Bees! I try to avoid doing too many videos on war history, because, you know, the death. But humans are curious creatures, naturally drawn towards the dark, mysterious cesspools of misery in the world. Exactly the stuff that you can find when studying the horrors of war or playing League of Legends. Luckily, you can always count on the shenanigans of Persians, bees, and or racists.
Yeah, yeah, true. We used to go to war. Now we're playing League of Legends and browsing Reddit. Goodness, just as bad. Just as bad for the human psyche.
Help make overall grim topics a bit more digestible. But enough from me. What do you think, Life Lesson Leopard? Hello? Oh, hold on. My troops have just about finished decimating Missouri in Conflict of Nations World War III. You could speed up its destruction by clicking the link in the description.
Alright, I think that's the end of this one. Another last shot taken at Missouri, my goodness. He really had it out for Missouri in this one. Another episode of Wacky War Tactics. Yeah, once again, really lives up to the name. Some very strange strategies and tactics we got to see throughout this one. If you guys enjoyed this one, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a like, subscribe, and you can become either a patron or a channel member. You can find both of those down below. I hope you guys are all having a great day today, and I will see you all again next time. Goodbye.